The forest was dark, and the only sound was her quick, shaky breaths. She turned, desperate to find a way out, but he was still there, watching her with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. She felt her heart race as the realization hit her. This was not the prince she thought he was. Hello friends, welcome to Story Hut, where timeless African tales come alive. Step inside and let the magic of storytelling whisk you away. Don't forget to subscribe and join the journey. Once in a quiet village of Amaeze, on the edge of a vast forest, there lived a young girl named Adaku. Adaku was known throughout her village for her curiosity and bright spirit. She had a lively imagination and always dreamed of something more. Stories of princes and faraway lands. Tales of adventures that broke free from the calm, ordinary life she knew. One hot afternoon, a stranger arrived in the village. He was young, tall, and strikingly handsome, wearing fine, colorful robes that shimmered under the sunlight. He had a quiet confidence about him that caught everyone's attention, especially Adaku's. When he spoke, his voice was smooth and calm, with a charm that made people want to listen. He introduced himself as a prince from a distant land, traveling alone to experience life beyond his kingdom. From the start, Adaku was enchanted. Here was the real-life prince standing right before her. She listened, wide-eyed, as he spoke of his kingdom, with mountains so tall they touched the clouds, rivers that sparkled like jewels, and gardens filled with flowers from every corner of the earth. He claimed he had come seeking a bride, someone simple, kind, and unlike the shallow people of his court. And out of all the young girls he'd met on his journey, he said Adaku was the one, and none caught his eyes like she did. Adaku felt flattered. No one had ever spoken to her that way. Her friends and family warned her, though. They whispered that something didn't feel right. As the sun began to set over, Adaku couldn't shake off the feeling of unease. She had just met a mysterious stranger with piercing eyes and charming words, who had made her feel seen and valued like never before. "Be careful, Adaku," her best friend Amara whispered as they walked through the bustling market. "He's too perfect, too smooth," was his true intention. Adaku's mother, a wise and aged woman named Noma, echoed similar concerns. "My child, don't let his sweet words blind you. Remember, a river that is too calm may be hiding dangerous depths." No one in the village had heard of this prince or his supposed kingdom. Why would a prince, they asked, be wandering alone, looking for a bride in such a small hidden place? But Adaku missed her doubts. Despite the warnings, Adaku found herself drawn to the stranger's charismatic presence. She couldn't explain why, but his words had awakened a spark within her. She was charmed by his looks, his stories, his clothes. To her, he looked and spoke exactly like the prince she had always dreamed of. Anyway guys, before we continue our video, please make sure to like our video and also subscribe. With your support, we can do more. Over the next few days, the claimed Prince Emenike and Adaku spent nearly every moment together. He took her on walks along the riverbank and through the village, where he'd spin tales of his palace, rooms filled with gold and silver, gardens where rare birds sang, and libraries with ancient books that held secrets of the world. She listened to him, hanging on every word, but sometimes small things nagged at her, even if she didn't want to admit it. He was vague whenever she asked about his family, his kingdom, or the places he'd traveled. He'd change the subject or laugh it off, saying it wasn't important. Once, she asked about a scar on his wrist, a deep dark mark that looked out of place on someone so polished. He glanced down at it quickly, almost like he had forgotten it was there, then covered it up and told her it was just from an accident. She noticed that his stories didn't always line up. Sometimes he'd say he had no siblings. Other times he talked about his older brother. But each time, Adako brushed it off, telling herself she was just overthinking. One evening, as the sun dipped below the trees and the forest grew thick with shadows, Prince Emenike asked Adako to join him for a walk deep into the woods. He said he had something special to show her, a gift he'd brought for her from his kingdom, something only she could see. Adako felt a small twinge of unease. The forest was dense and dark at night, a place she rarely ventured alone. But her curiosity won out, and she told herself that with the prince beside her, she had nothing to fear. They walked side by side, leaving the familiar paths and winding deeper into the trees. The air was colder there, and it grew quieter the farther they went. The usual sounds of crickets and birds faded, leaving only the sound of their footsteps. Adako glanced around, trying to remember the way back, but everything started to look the same. Trees, shadows, and endless darkness. Finally, they reached a small clearing, and Prince Emenike stopped. He turned to her with that same charming smile, but something felt different now. There was an intensity in his eyes, a coldness she hadn't seen before. "You really believed I was a prince, didn't you?" he asked, his voice low and mocking. Adako felt her heart skip a beat. The look on his face was nothing like the gentleman she'd been talking to. She tried to laugh it off, to act like it was a joke, but he didn't smile back. He took a step closer, his eyes dark and piercing. Who are you?" she managed to ask, her voice shaking. The man's smile faded, replaced with a hard, cruel expression. "I told you what you wanted to hear," he said, his tone sharp. "You wanted a prince, so I became one." He stepped closer, and Adako took a step back. Feeling fear start to creep up her spine, she glanced around the clearing, her mind racing. They were far from the village, far from anyone who could help. He continued, "You were so easy to fool, Adako, so quick to believe in the fairy tale, to ignore the doubts, the questions." His voice turned cold. "People like you, so desperate to believe, you are exactly the kind of person I look for." Adako's stomach twisted in dread as she realized her mistake. She'd been blind, judging him only by what she wanted to see. She took another step back, her legs trembling, her heart pounding. She thought of her family, her friends, everyone who had warned her to be careful, to stay away. She had ignored them all. With a sudden burst of courage, Adako turned and bolted into the trees. She didn't look back. Branches scratched her face and arms. Her breath came in gasps. But she didn't stop. She could hear him behind her, his footsteps quick and steady, but she kept going, pushing herself forward, praying she'd find the path back. Finally, she burst out of the forest, stumbling into the familiar edge of the village. She was exhausted, her clothes torn, but she was safe. She looked back, expecting to see him at the edge of the trees, but there was nothing. Just the silent, dark forest, hiding whatever or whoever he truly was. From that night on, Adaku changed. She was quiet, more guarded, and every time she saw someone new in the village, her heart raced, reminding her of the lesson she'd learned. She told her story to warn others, urging them to look deeper, to be cautious of smooth words and charming smiles. Not everyone is who they seem to be. Sometimes a lie looks just like the truth, and by the time you see the difference, it might be too late. Thank you guys so much for watching. See you in our next video, and please don't forget to like, comment and subscribe to our channel. We love you, and with your support we can do more.